What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Realtime, aka Ever Oddish, coming at you with a tutorial for DrFujiBot 2.0. This idea came from one of the DrFujiBot users that suggested maybe I make like a YouTube video that explains how to use DrFujiBot and showcase some of the features that it has that you may not know about. So thank you for that. I think I'll go ahead and show you how it works. So normally you would go to Dr. Fujibot's project on github.com/everoddish, and this is where you would download the latest version. I've already got that downloaded, so I'll just switch over to the desktop here and run the installer. So while the installer runs, maybe I'll just explain a bit about why I made the bot the way it is now. You can just use the defaults here. So it used to be that DrFujiBot ran on a server that I paid for every month, and that worked okay for a couple years, but I just kind of got tired of maintaining it and paying for it every month, which I didn't mind doing, but I thought it'd make more sense if the new version of DrFujiBot ran on the streamer's computer, so you'd have more control over it, and I could update it more easily with all the latest data for Pokemon games that come out. So with the old Fujibot, I had to wait a long time for Gen 7 support because I relied on another data source. With this new rewrite, I control all the data, so when Gen 8 came out, for example, I was able to add all the data on the same day that it released a new version of DrFujiBot, and it had all that stuff ready for you right away. So I thought it made more sense to make it so that there were sensible defaults that wouldn't really get in the way of a streamer if they had another bot, like a Nightbot running, for example. So just some of the most default commands that you would expect of DrFujiBot are enabled by default, but there's a lot of other customization that you can add on top of that, so that's what I'm going to go through in this video. What I've done so far is make sure that I'm signed in to my Twitch account on twitch.tv. And then once the installer completes to this point, it'll say launch Twitch authorization. So if you've never installed DrFujiBot before, you'll want to leave that checked off and hit finish. That opens the web page that will authorize Fujibot to be used in your Twitch channel. All you have to do is hit complete authorization, and that will save the tokens that were obtained from the Twitch servers. So that just takes a second. What you do have to make sure of is that your system time is set correctly. If you've changed it for some reason, for cheating in a game or something, just make sure you set it back to normal before you do that step. The default username and password is just admin and admin. And this is how you will manage and run DrFujiBot from this web interface. So what Fujibot does is install a web server on your computer, but rest assured it's only available to you locally. It won't be available over the internet to someone else. So that's why it says localhost here at the top. So it's secure in that way. So you can see in the dashboard, you've got a list of all the settings and a few useful links here. So I'll just go through them one by one. So first of all, the afflicted Pokemon and afflictions is for a special type of Nuzlocke called an affliction lock, where you can assign afflictions to Pokemon as you encounter them. Fujibot has the ability to track that stuff. It's not a huge popular feature, but just worth mentioning. Next, we have banned phrases. So Fujibot can perform some moderation actions. If you do want to quote-unquote nuke a certain phrase in your chat, Fujibot can recognize that phrase and time out anyone that uses it in the past or in the future. So that's where you would control that. The next one is commands. That's a big one, so I'll just click on that. This gives you a list of all the default commands. These are all the ones that are here by default. We don't have to go through all of them, but if you add custom commands like you would with any other bot, those would show up here as well. Each one has permission settings, so most of these are disabled, as you can see, just in case they happen to conflict with another bot that's running. And then the rest of the lookup functions are either moderator only or broadcaster only. Looks like they're moderator only by default. So that way, you and your mods are the only ones that can spam the chat with Pokemon lookup commands. But if you do want to make them, for example, subscriber only, you can do that. Or if you want to make them available to everyone. So you would check off the command you want to modify, and then you can choose subscriber only or everyone. And you can also add a cooldown. So if someone's spamming the commands too much, but you still want them to be available for everyone, you can add a cooldown of a few seconds so that anyone that attempts to use it again too quickly, it just won't do anything. So I'll change that one to subscriber only, for example, and then you can select go, and it updates right away. If you want to do a whole bunch of commands at once, you can select them all, set them to everyone, for example, and select go. There it goes. And then the little check mark or X over here on the right is for the cooldown. And it also keeps track of how many times the commands have been used, so you can see which ones are most popular in your chat, including the custom commands that you might make. So another useful feature of this page is you can sort by name, for example. Click the command column, and you'll get an alphabetical list of commands. Or if you want to sort them by invocation count, you can see the most used commands, the least used commands. And then over here on the right, which is also useful, is the filter. So you can see whether you only want to see built-in commands that are in DrFujiBot by default. So you can click yes. Those would all be the default commands, which is what we're looking at anyway. Or you can say no. That'll give you all the custom commands. So none of the default ones show up. These would only be ones that you've added yourself. So you can add those new custom commands either in the Twitch chat with the add comm command like you would with Nightbot, for example, or you can add them in the dashboard here. If you want to set them all up before your stream, you don't need to be in Twitch chat to do that. So click add command. Now I can make a new command for example. It does have to start with an exclamation point. You can select the permissions and whether or not you want a cooldown. And now the tricky part here for some people, they don't realize the outputs of commands are separate from the command names. So this allows you to do something like set up an alias for one command to point to another one. They will both show the same output. So if someone uses like a nickname command and another person types nicknames with an S on the end, you can alias both of those to the same output. So you can create an output that may or may not have the same prefix all the time, like so. That would show up in front of the output every time, and then you can modify the output itself. This is an example, and then save that. Now this example command is pointing to the example output. Then you can hit save. Now we're back at the command dashboard. This shows you the name of the command you just created, the output text that will be displayed if someone uses that command in chat, and whether it has a cooldown, etc. So I'll go back to the dashboard here, just using the little breadcrumb navigation at the top. The next one is deaths. So if you're doing a Nuzlocke, DrFujiBot can keep track of which Pokemon have died and how many respects the chat might have paid towards them by pressing F at the time. So if you click on deaths, normally this would be populated by the rip command in the chat, or you can add them manually if you really want to. So this would be the nickname of the Pokemon that died, and potentially which run you were using at the time. I'll get into that more later, and which attempt count of that run. So I'll save one just as an example. It requires a run, I guess, so I'll use a default run. So a run will keep track of how many times you've attempted that challenge, which game you were playing at the time, and then you can optionally set the output of a command to show how far you got in the last run and how far you've gotten out of all your attempts. So I'll make a default run and then save that. So now you've got a death of a Pokemon named Nickname, which run they were part of, and which attempt count it was, and time of death. So back to the dashboard. FujiBot also supports quotes. So if a streamer says something amusing, you can keep track of that for later lookup. You can use the quote command. It'll give you either a random quote or a specific one that you're looking for, either by searching some text that's in the quote or the number of the quote. In this case, it might say this is a quote, and then the name of the streamer. So that'll be in the quote database. You'd be able to look up that quote either by ID number 1, so you would do exclamation point quote 1, or you could type one of the keywords in here and it would find it that way. Next is the runs, which I've kind of already explained. It does have a default setting, or you can create as many as you want with specific names. and then that will just allow you to switch between runs easily. So if you want to keep track of 2 different challenge runs you're doing at the same time in different games, it's easy to switch between them, and it will automatically switch all the lookup functions to either being from Pokemon Red, for example, or Ultra Sun, for example. Next is the settings window. So this one I especially wanted to go over because there's some settings in here that you might be interested in. If you have a Last.fm account, you can have DrFujiBot display what song is currently playing with the song command. What you have to do to set that up is put in your Last.fm username, and DrFujiBot has just a key that allows it to authenticate with Last.fm. I can provide that to you if you're interested, so you would just contact me, and I could give that to you for the right setting. And if you want to contact me, I'll leave my contact info at the end of the video and in the description. If you do want to use the coin feature, FujiBot has like a meaningless coin gimmick that it keeps track of. So each user in the chat would get a few coins per minute if they're sticking around and participating. This is where you could change that setting. So if I change it to 2, every minute that any user is in my chat, they'll get 2 more coins, and FujiBot will add those coins in the background as time goes on. Twitch username is not modifiable, I don't think. Yeah, so I can't change it. That's populated from the authentication that you did at the start. That just kind of lets you know whose Twitch account it's actually going to show up in the chat for. The next one is IRC service. So this is the piece that sits between DrFujiBot, the data source, and DrFujiBot, the Twitch user. So this is where it will connect to the Twitch chat servers with this component. But sometimes you might need to restart this component, or sometimes you might want to turn FujiBot off for a minute just so nobody can use it while you do something else, and then you can turn it back on if you want. So it's running by default. If I just say stopped and then hit save, now DrFujiBot won't be available in my chat until I go back in and turn it back on with setting it to running. The next one is where you would change the cooldown seconds between commands if you have cooldown ticked off for that particular command. The next one after that is the quotee setting. So if you are adding quotes, this is who it will say the quote was said by. And then the current run and the current game, those you can change manually, but it's more likely you would use a Twitch command to do that from the command list, and that would allow you to change which run you're on currently, and that just displays it for you for convenience. So that's all the settings. If I go to the next one, simple outputs, these are the output pieces of the commands that I talked about before. So these have nothing to do with what command you invoke to see the output. This is just the output by itself. So I could have multiple commands point to this one output. And I could do that now just as an example. I've already got example for one command. If I make the next one called second, I can choose the same output that already exists and instead of creating a new one, and I hit save. So now they both point to this same output. But if I go back to dashboard, simple outputs, there's still only one output here, but both example and second will output this same piece of text. So lastly, FujiBot also supports timed messages. So if you want to create a timed message that happens every so many minutes, this is also based on the outputs I just talked about. So we can also choose an existing one without creating a new entry. We can reuse the same text, and this could happen, be output in Twitch chat every 10 minutes, for example. It'll keep track of how many times it has been output, and if you want to limit that, you can say 5, and it will only, or 6, let's say, it'll only do that every 10 minutes for an hour, and then it will stop. But it won't delete this entry, so you can go back and modify it later if you want to. And you can also change whether you want that time message to be output only when you're online and streaming, or only if you're offline and not streaming, so that if someone shows up in your chat when you're not online, it'll output a message every few minutes to let you know some information, or you can leave it as unspecified and it will go all the time. So I'll just save that one. So that's it for the dashboard. I'll just go back to the home page. So the home page has all the things in the dashboard, plus a list of recent actions that we've been performing. And lastly, a few other extra links that are useful. So I have my Twitch chat window open. It should be able to do an example command and see the output that we created. But if you don't have Twitch chat available, or if you're not a Twitch streamer at all, you just want to use DrFujiBot and look up Pokemon information without using Twitch, you can use the DrFujiBot web console. So this is essentially the same idea. It's got all the same interface as a Twitch chat, and I should still be able to example, and it will show that same output. So that's a good way to test things out, or if you're not a Twitch streamer, you can still use DrFujiBot. The next two are for when DrFujiBot isn't behaving well, so there still are some bugs in it. I still haven't been able to track down why the bot doesn't restart itself when you put your computer to sleep and then wake it up again. So usually what you have to do is either click Restart Fujibot Chat Service, which essentially does the same thing as in the settings, where we would change the IRC service to stopped or running. That'll just do a stop and a start. And then the reauthorize link, that's if you want to reperform the step that the installation did, if you want to change the Twitch account you're using, or if it's not working and you need to reauthorize just to make sure it'll start up again. That's how you would do that. And then these last three are just links to the GitHub pages for quick start, all the information you might need to know in summary, the command documentation. So this explains every single command that is on by default, either lookup commands, admin commands like adding quotes, counting deaths, that kind of thing, or betting commands for the coin feature. So I haven't mentioned yet, but not only do you get coins for staying in chat, you can also create events and then resolve them with specific outcomes, and the winners will get the amount of coins that are available in the pot and so on. And the last one is frequently asked questions. So a lot of questions, things you might wonder about how it's implemented, or what do I do if it's not working? Is it secure? All that stuff. I don't know how much people read that, so that's why I'm making this YouTube video. So lastly, maybe I'll just do a demonstration of some of the things that you can do with DrFujiBot. I'll set the game to Sword because it does support Gen 8 all the way up to the Isle of Armor expansion pack as of the time of this video. You can look up Pokemon such as Dragapult. It'll give you the stats, the typing, the abilities. Even if I misspelled Dragapult, I won't go too hard. It should still be able to recognize, there we go. It should still be able to recognize what you meant. You can also look up the definitions of abilities like Intimidate, for example, tells you what that does. You can look up a move like Recover. It'll tell you if applicable, the base power, the type, the accuracy, the PP, the description, priority, all that stuff. You can look up a learn set of Wooloo, see what moves it learns at what level. And you can look up the TM set as well. Let's try Blastoise. Those are all the TMs and TRs that Blastoise can learn. I'm probably missing other ones like EV, Caterpie. So this would show you, I guess I got that one wrong, but there's a command to show you which EVs you would get for fighting a wild Caterpie, for example. All these other lookup commands are available on the wiki page. Lookup commands, what items there are, natures, how to evolve Pokemon. It'll give you what level or what item you need. Does a Pokemon learn a specific move? What is type? Ground, steel, weak to, for example, or the Pokemon itself instead of having to specify the type. Catch rate, offense, defense, EV yields is the one I was trying to do, and so on. So there's a lot of features, but I wanted to cover some of the non-Pokemon stuff that DrFujiBot does. A couple other interesting things is it will automatically back up the database of all these settings every so often. I think it's once a week, and save that to your computer locally. It also does a backup before installing a new version, so if something goes wrong with a new version, we'll still have a copy of your database. And to install a new version, you follow all the same steps that I just did with the installer. You just run it, it'll uninstall the old one, put the new one on, and all your settings should still be there at the end. And that's pretty much it. So I hope you enjoy all this, and let me know if something doesn't work or you have ideas, or especially if you want to help with DrFujiBot. If you are fluent in Python, I'd appreciate help with some of the tickets I have open. So there's plans for the future, things we'd like to add that would enhance the bot. But some of them are kind of large projects like Discord integration or that kind of thing. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll leave you with one final thought.